On today's show, I am answering all of your burning Rangers offseason questions about Rangers prospects, about what the Rangers do best, and a little bit of a look at the potential pitching coach for the Rangers. All that and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked on to the Texas Rangers. I'm Bryce, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan since 2010, the founder and host for all 4 seasons of this Locked On Rangers podcast. Today is Monday, November 21st. Thank y'all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you're not already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers and subscribe on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment any single thing below. Now, on today's show, I am doing a Monday mailbag. Yet again, I swear I said this week would be different. I said it would be different. I promised, but I wasn't. I was foolish, and I got to Monday, and I forgot to put out my call for questions. So, did that this morning. A couple of y'all answered the call, and there were also a few questions that I didn't get to last week, but this will be a weekly thing. So, hopefully, this week I will remember to put out the call for questions on like Thursday or Friday. Maybe that won't happen because it's Black Friday and Thanksgiving this weekend. But anyway, thanks to all of you who have asked questions. And if you would like to, just drop them in the comments on YouTube or just tweet at me. Just tweet them at me, whether I put a call out or not. Always going to be doing this throughout the off season on Mondays, pretty much every week. But let's get into these questions. The first one comes to us from Mavs Draft on Twitter. Fill in the blank, however you deem most appropriate. The Rangers have the best blank in the league. Can be something related to atmosphere / stadium, roster, stats, management, farm, etc. that you feel fits best. Okay. Well, this is tough because the Rangers have been, well, bad. They have been pretty darn bad for a few years now. And it seems like, how can you say this team has something that's great, blah, 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 blah. Well, there's always something that one team does really, really well. And I think if you're going on judging from this upcoming season, it feels aggressive to say, but I want to say that the Rangers will have the best middle infield in baseball next year. I thought that might be the case this year with Marcus Semien and Corey Seager. They both kind of underperformed, but still had solid enough seasons. Semien, this was one of his worst years that he's had in quite a long time, but after that horrendous month of April and May, he really started to figure it out and looked like his old self again. I think he is not going to have that same struggle period. It might not be the strongest start, but I don't think it's going to be anywhere near the horrendous start to the season that he had last year. Seager was fantastic at home and pretty below average to bad on the road. If he could just figure out how to hit not at Globe Life Field, then he's going to be a really darn good player. He already is a really darn good player. I mean, he had a 900 OPS at home and I think 700-ish, maybe it was less than that, on the road. But if he can just start hitting on the road, which I don't know why he couldn't, plus the shift being banned, I think will also help him explode a bit offensively more so than he did this year, which, by the way, he still set a career high in home runs for himself this year. I think a lot of that was due to the fact that he was hitting so often at Globe Life Field, which seems to be by far his favorite field to hit at. And I think it is him hitting so freaking well here during that 2020 postseason run might have been a huge part of it. But I do think that he is going to bounce back next year, which, you know, after him having a 33 home run season, saying he's going to bounce back next year, man, that would be a fantastic season for him. Somewhere around the 900-ish OPS that has been kind of the standard for him when he's healthy. And I think Semien could be somewhere in that, 825 to 850 range. I really, really liked what I saw from him last year. Towards the back half, the power was very much there. Again, he needs to learn how to hit at Globe Life Field and, continue to hit very well away from him. I swear, if both of those guys could hit in like one place, then maybe the Rangers would have been 500. If they were both amazing at home or both amazing on the road, then maybe that would have changed some things. But yeah, I think the Rangers. I wanted to go full infield, best offensive infield next year, but I think that's if you add Nathaniel Lowe in there, he was the best offensive first baseman in the American League this year. And I think that, the competition for this best middle infield is probably going to be, well, depending on what the Dodgers do, who they sign, depending on what the Mets do, what they sign, and depending on where they put Fernando Tatis Jr. in San Diego, I think that Houston is probably going to be the biggest competition for these Rangers as to who has the best middle infield. But I believe in these guys. I think offensively they could definitely be the best overall. I think they could be the best. I think Semien, at his peak, he showed he had an amazing overall season at second base in 2021 with the Blue Jays before he came to Texas. So I think that could be a huge boon for the Rangers. You know what? I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Rangers had the best offensive infield in baseball. That's what I'm going to say. Betting big on Josh Jung being amazing, Nathaniel Lowe being amazing, and both of these middle infielders being fantastic. Now, I think Houston is, depending on who they get, if Houston signs Jose Abreu, then I'm going to look really stupid for this. But, I've looked stupid before, and I'm not going to give out compliments that I don't have to about that team in Houston. So, yeah, I say the Rangers' best is best offensive infield. There's some other categories. I think maybe defensive outfield, depending on who's out there. I think that could also be another category that the Rangers would consider themselves the best in. Bubba Thompson is elite defensively with his speed and his jumps. The arm's not great, but he's in left field, so that's fine. Leody Taveras is one of the best defensive center fielders in all of baseball, and he has one of the biggest arms in all of baseball, makes fantastic reads, is incredibly fast. And Adolis Garcia, he could just be a little more consistent next year. He's got the massive arm. He makes some pretty good jumps. He is, I think, good enough to be an okay defensive center fielder, but I think he's best suited in right field. So, yeah, I'll say best offensive infield, best defensive outfield for what the Rangers are the best in baseball at. Coming up, we're going to look at some more questions dealing more with prospects, a little bit about the coaching staff, and, of course, a little bit about Jacob deGrom. But first, this episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all of your sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. You can get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. From football to basketball to soccer and esports, we have got it all at BetOnline. The U.S. men's national team plays their first game today in the World Cup. If you're wanting to go bet on the U.S. MNT to win their group, I think after England just absolutely shellacked Iran in the first game, maybe that's not the smartest move, but maybe you feel good about the U.S. men's national team being able to get out of their group in second place. Maybe they're not going to put up a 6-1 or 7-2, whatever the final score was. But you can make your bets there. You can bet on the Cowboys coming off an amazing game. You can bet on the Mavs and maybe Luka to do things. I don't know. I'm sure there's some bets related to Luka Doncic or the Dallas Stars, who are also amazing right now that you can make. But they're the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more, because BetOnline, it's where the game starts. Now, this next question comes to us. It was asked last week, and I kind of answered it, but mainly did not answer it. So I wanted to actually give this man an answer. This comes to us from Locked On MLB Prospects host Lindsey Crosby. Fantastic. Go check out the show. Occasionally he says nice things about the Rangers, which is nice. But anyway, his question is, you have lots of infield prospects, and with Josh Jung taking third base, exactly 0 starting spots available on that infield. How many of them are you comfortable trading to get a stud pitcher or two who is ideally suited to move to the outfield? Then had a follow-up. Is there any position you think Luisangel Acuna couldn't play because it feels like he could do anything he wanted on the baseball field? Well, I'll answer the second one first because it's shorter. I think that Luisangel Acuna probably can't play catcher, but other than that, I think he could do pretty much anything. Really like what I've seen from him. Had a great year, and I think could make the big leagues as soon as next year. I don't know about this year. This year might be a bit of a stretch, but I think some point next year would definitely be possible. As for the infield prospects, the Rangers do have a glutton of those infield prospects. Those include Justin Foscue, Luis Angel Acuna. I think we're still including Josh Smith and Ezekiel Duran in this for my argument purposes, because you have to go down just a little ways further after that cropping. There's also Maximo Acosta, Thomas Sajaci, and Jonathan Ornelas that are kind of in the upper levels, guys that you would think about trading. There's also a few guys in the lower in the system that have had some pretty good years, but are still like teenagers. Leiter Figueroa, who is a shortstop prospect who made his debut in full season ball last year, did pretty well, but he is 18 years old, so don't really know what you're getting there. Same with Daniel Cueva, who is a shortstop prospect listed at 27 in the Rangers MLB pipeline rankings. He is also 18, made his full season debut this year, did pretty well. But of the guys, who are the Rangers most likely to trade? Who am I most comfortable trading? How many of them? The answer is a lot. The answer is a lot of them, because the Rangers need some pitching help. I talked about it a whole lot on Friday's episode, that if the Rangers get Jacob deGrom, who, by the way, at this point is my number one choice for free agent of who the Rangers should sign and spend all the money on versus Rodon. I think the top end of his possibilities are a little bit better, and I'm somehow less concerned about his injury history than Rodon, even though Rodon was fully healthy last year. But I think the one that I'm most reticent to trade is Ezekiel Duran, because I think he is the best suited for the outfield. I think he's got the speed, he's got the arm, he's got, I haven't seen him in the outfield. Unfortunately, I have seen a little bit of Josh Smith in the outfield. I think he did a really good job in center field, which I think that if he could have just like a little bit of power, just a little bit of power, like not Isaiah Kiner, like better than Isaiah Kiner for level power, then I think that he could be an everyday starting guy. If he had like a 40 on the 40 on the 20 to 80 scouting grade scale, which is below average. So that's like, I don't know, 10 home runs, 25 to 30 doubles. If he could do that, then I think that Josh Smith is an everyday big leaguer, because he's got the on-base skills, he's got the bat-to-ball skills, he is a legitimate defensive shortstop, and I think he's got a lot of value as a super utility guy at the moment. I think Duran would be fantastic in the outfield. I don't think they're going to move Luis Angel Acuna off of shortstop, because that's where he's got the most value. I think he is an everyday shortstop in the big leagues. Defensively, he's great there. I think he'd be pretty good at second base as well. Stings the crap out of the ball, makes some pretty good plate appearance, and has a pretty good approach for someone his age. But I think of those guys, Luis Angel Acuna, as much as I really, really like him, I think that he might be the one who has the highest value that I'm most willing to trade. Duran, I think he fits in really well in left field, and I would like to see him there, maybe over Bubba Thompson, depending on how much he can hit for power at the big league level. We didn't see as much as I thought we would from Duran in his first year in the big leagues, but I think it's there, and I think he did a really good job of holding his own for how limited his time above A-ball has been. And he's done a really, really great job in Double-A, done a really great job offensively in Triple-A as well. So I think he's the one that I'd be most hesitant to trade. Josh Smith, I would feel good about trading if someone saw him as an everyday big leaguer, but the Rangers don't. I mean, I think he still could be. He's got that in there. He is a really good player. And Justin Foscue, I think, would be the guy that I'd be very willing to just trade off like right now for a lot of things. I think he's going to be a decent hitter at the big league level. I think he could be passable at second base, but the Rangers have so many guys that are in front of him, and also in front of him if he is just a left field / DH / maybe first base type of guy. The Rangers have guys who I think are better than him. A few guys ahead of him in the pecking order, including, Evan Carter, if you do end up putting him in left, Zavala, and I might even be leaning towards Trevor Hauver over him. Not sure, but I think I might be, because I think Hauver's got a little bit more power, at least that he's showing more consistently. But maybe that's just a little bit of bias. Anyway, I hope that answers that question. I would be willing to move all of them if the right deal came along. If it was for a Corbin Burns, I think I would be willing to trade most of those guys in Acuna, Duran, and Smith. Probably have to throw someone else in there. But yeah, I think that's what it would take for me to give up all those guys. But Duran is the guy who I'm highest on of that group for this Rangers team. Now, overall ceiling, I think Acuna might be a little bit higher because he is a legit defensive shortstop. And I don't think that Duran is. I think Duran could be an everyday third baseman if they decide to go that route and move Josh Jung to left field. But I don't think they're going to do that. And so I think that is where I land on that question. Coming up, we're going to get into some prospects that I consider untouchable and a little bit of a look at the Rangers coaching staff. But first, this episode is brought to you by SimpliSafe. If you've thought about securing your home with home security but have been putting it off, you'll want to listen up. Right now, Locked On Rangers can order the #1 rated SimpliSafe home security system for 50% off. This is their biggest offer of the year, and you won't want to miss it. Here is why you'll love it. In an emergency, 24/7 professional monitoring agents using fast protect technology exclusively from SimpliSafe to capture critical evidence and verify the threat is real so you can get a priority police response. Don't miss your chance to save big on the only security system that I recommend. Get 50% off new SimpliSafe system, any new SimpliSafe system at simplysafe.com/lockedonmlb. This is their biggest discount of the year, so don't wait. That's simplysafe.com/lockedonmlb. There's no safe like SimpliSafe. Now, this next question comes to us from, where'd we go? Hunter Wentworth. He says, are there any prospects you consider untouchable? The answer is yeah. There's only a couple, though. Before the season, I would have said Jack Leiter. I said, all right, that guy is off limits. He is off the table. Do not deal him for anything. He is going to be a surefire thing, straight ticket right to the big leagues, and is going to be freaking amazing with the chance to be outright exceptional. After this year, less untouchable. I think I'd be, if I were to name Jack Leiter untouchable at this point, it would more be about his value being much lower at this point than I think it should be. Not that it should be, but that the Rangers would feel comfortable dealing him. It would be like a real sell low, unless the Rangers think like, all right, no, this guy is actually not going to be nearly as good as we thought, and we have got to sell at the peak of his value. I don't think they think that. I think they're really high on him. This wasn't a great first year, but I think he's going to get a lot better and still be really darn good. But the only for sure untouchable guys that I would have on there at this point is Evan Carter. Evan Carter has been fantastic for the Rangers, an absolute steal in the second round, had an unbelievably good season. He is still so young, just turned 20, already made his AA debut, was fantastic for the Rough Riders while he was there, was fantastic in high A, could make his big league debut by the end of the season depending on how some things go and how the Rangers feel about him, but I think he starts in AA, probably gets the bump to AAA if things go well mid-season. I'm hoping, unless they want to be really, really careful with him, which I would get a little bit, but if he's dominating in AA, I mean, he had the plate appearances in that playoff run, taking them to the championship. He's got a lot of experience under his belt. He has always been very advanced for his age, which is why he is just flying through the system. Next closest on that, if you're still considering Josh Jung prospect, which I guess technically he still is, he still does have rookie eligibility. I think he'd be next on that list of guys who are untouchable. I think this might be my own bias in the way, but I think I'd be more unwilling to give up Josh Jung just because, Red Raider and Texas kid. And I think the Rangers see a little bit of value in that, of him being like Texas kid, homegrown. I think the fan base is really going to love him. They already do. Tech fans already very much love him. But the next guy, the only other guy who I think would be close up there is Owen White, Owen White and Brock Porter are both kind of in that same range for different reasons. With Porter, it's like I have literally no idea what he is, what he could do. We haven't seen him at all in organized professional baseball, so I think trading him now would be just kind of crazy because he hasn't established a whole lot of value, and he hasn't lost a whole lot of value of what he did in the draft. But Owen White is, I think, for me, the top pitching prospect at this point for the Rangers. I think he passed Jack Leiter with how well he did. I mean, every Rangers pitching prospect had some kind of a red flag this year. Owens was injuries, which he missed a lot of time in his career so far, but he's shown when he is on the hill, he is dominant. That like 6 week or 8 week stretch where he just had elbow inflammation. It's like he's fine. He's just fine. And then no one said anything about it for like 2 months. That was really worrying. But the fact that he came back and looked as great as he did makes me much less worried. I think he could, as another candidate to make his major league debut this year. I think towards the end of the year, probably want to get some innings under his belt. Probably starts the year in Double-A. Maybe they get aggressive and assign him to Triple-A because he did have a decent chunk of time in Double-A. But I'd still like to see him get some more Texas League reps. But the only other people who were even like considering in that range is another guy that is kind of in the same range of Jack Leiter, and that's a lot of these Rangers pitching prospects. That's Cole Winn, I think, as well, and I think Kumar Rocker also. A lot of those guys are in the they have really crappy value right now, and they wouldn't be. You'd be selling too low on them, and you'd feel really, really crappy about it if they ended up being amazing somewhere else and you sold them at the lowest point of value that they had. And I think that's my main concern. Next question comes from Chris Rowland on Twitter. DeGrom or DeField? Well, I think we're going to take this as free agency, as if the Rangers are going to sign DeGrom or DeField. I think at this point, it's kind of close. I think it's kind of close. But I had to take the field because Carlos Rodon is a very, very real and good possibility. There is a chance that the Rangers just don't get DeGrom. But I think if we're talking the Rangers over the field for DeGrom, I think the Rangers are more likely to sign DeGrom than DeField is. But I hope that answers that question. I should have asked for more clarification. Anyway. Next question comes to us from Locked On A's. Who is the scariest hitter in the A's lineup behind Seth Brown and Sean Murphy? Well, Sean Murphy is probably going to be gone because he is really, really good. Seth Brown was the obvious answer, but you took that away from me. So I'm going to say Shea Langeliers. Really, really like that guy. Probably going to be the A's everyday catcher next year. Kid out of Baylor, traded in the Matt Olson trade from the Braves. I think he's going to be really darn good defensively and offensively. Next question comes from us from Duckhahn on Twitter. If you had to take a wild guess, what will Bruce Bochy's staff look like? Well, at this point, it is pretty much cinched up that it's going to look very similar to last year. Donnie Acker, I think, is going to be back as bench coach / offensive coordinator. They did add Will Venable, who was the Red Sox bench coach, as the associate manager. I have no idea what that title means. I have never seen it before. But interesting. Kind of feels a little bit of a too many cooks in the kitchen, spoil the broth. If you're as online as me, just probably trigger something in you. I'm very sorry for that. But I don't really know what Will Venable is going to do, but sure, why not? Tim Hires is going to be back as hitting coach. I think the corner infield coaches are going to be pretty much the same. Corey Ragsdale and Tony Beasley is going to be back. The only question really is the pitching coach. And my wild guess is that it is going to be Mike Maddox. I think he makes a lot of sense. I think coming back to the Rangers would be a nice fit, and being under Bochy, I think he would be comfortable with that because, who wouldn't want to go and coach with Bruce Bochy? Done a really good job in St. Louis, was the pitching coach for the Rangers in their most successful years. Maybe they can bring Mike Maddox a ring. That would be pretty darn cool. But yeah, I think Mike Maddox is the main one. By the way, if you're looking to read some more about Bruce Bochy, Evan Grant at the Dallas Morning News did this really, really great long feature on Bruce Bochy and why he decided to come back. Go check it out. It's definitely worth a read. And this last question comes to us from my brother Bradley, talking about the World Cup and asking, if with the World Cup going on, is there an equivalent for baseball? Well, Yes. And for those of you who don't know, there is the World Baseball Classic, which is basically baseball's equivalent of the World Cup. I wish it got a little bit more publicity, than it has. And it's kind of weird trying to figure out the timing for it, trying not to make it during the middle of the Major League season because it's obviously not big enough for that. I mean, like the World Cup for soccer, everyone will stop all their seasons and go be a part of the World Cup, and they will just put the entire season on pause. The World Baseball Classic isn't that big. The 2017 edition, I think, was the last time that they did it, and there was a lot of publicity then. The Rangers had a decent amount of stars come in, not always the best of the best, but that was a lot of fun watching those teams. The Dominican team was fantastic. The Venezuelan team, by the way, Martin Perez, I think, has already committed to pitch for the Venezuelan team. But yes, there is an equivalent right now. I don't think there are any Rangers that are committed. Yeah, there are no Rangers that are committed to the Team USA roster. There are quite a few big stars that have already committed to playing for Team USA, though. So I'm not sure how many spots there are for the Rangers, but I do think there is some spots for the middle infield in Marcus Semien or Corey Seager. If either of them decide to play for the team, I think they will start. But Nathaniel Lowe, as great as he was, I don't think that he is necessarily going to start because at catcher, you already have JT Realmuto of the Phillies, who I think is the best catcher in all of baseball. Will Smith for the Dodgers, who I think is probably up there as top 5, if not top 3 catcher in all of baseball. First base, you have the reigning NL MVP, Paul Goldschmidt and Pete Alonso. Second base, you have Trevor Story committed. Third base, Nolan Arenado. Bobby Witt Jr. At shortstop, you have Tim Anderson. The outfield is just absolutely stacked at this point. You have Mookie Betts, Bryce Harper, Mike Trout, Cedric Mullins, and Kyle Tucker. The Rangers, I think Bubba Thompson is the foremost American outfielder. I don't think that he is going to supplant Mookie Betts, Bryce Harper, Cedric Mullins, or Mike Trout. Sorry to burst your bubble there. But I do think the Rangers could see one of their guys start at second or shortstop. I really like Tim Anderson, but I think that Corey Seager would probably start over him. I don't know if Trey Turner would end up starting over Seager, but I think I might lean more towards Seager. Correa is going to play for Puerto Rico. If he does play, I haven't seen if he's committed or not. And Nathaniel Lowe, he's not going to start over Paul Goldschmidt. I don't think he's going to start at DH over what'll probably be Bryce Harper. If it were me, I'd put, I'd put Mike Trout in center field. I'd put Mookie Betts in right field and Kyle Tucker in left, and then have Bryce Harper DH. But then you also have Cedric Mullins if you want to throw him in there. Maybe, I don't know. But first base / DH, Nathaniel Lowe, I think he would probably be, behind Bryce Harper. He might be behind Pete Alonso as the third choice first baseman, so I don't know if it would make sense for him to go. But I think that could be interesting if the Rangers do sign DeGrom. I would be very hesitant to say, yes, go DeGrom, go play in the World Baseball Classic, as much as I just talked about wanting to have stars on there. For guys who have some health concerns, maybe that's not it's not the best idea for them, which, Mike Trout is one of those guys, but I'm glad that he has signed up and will make it a lot easier and more encouraging for other people to sign up. At this point, the pitching staff includes Merrill Kelly of the Diamondbacks. He's pretty good. And then 3 relievers, David Bednar of the Pirates, Dylan Tate, former Ranger great, of the Baltimore Orioles, and Devin Williams of the Milwaukee Brewers. Williams and Tate are both pretty darn good. I don't know much about Bednar. Merrill Kelly is pretty good. So they could use some pitching help, some guys to commit. I don't think they're going to get guys like Clayton Kershaw. I don't know if they're going to get anybody like DeGrom or Rodon. No matter where those guys sign, they could use some more help in the starting pitching. But I'm sure they'll get some guys to commit. I'm sure they'll get some other big names to commit on the starting. And even if they don't, even if they get like some just middle of the rotation guys, filling out that rotation, if you have a lineup with just the outfield, not to mention, Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado, as like, maybe those guys will be like your 5-6 hitters. I don't know, but having Mike Trout, Mookie Betts, and Bryce Harper, and Kyle Tucker, and Cedric Mullins, and Paul Goldschmidt, it's just like absolutely insane. The fact that JT Realmuto might be hitting 7th or 8th or 9th is just Absolutely bonkers. But yeah, so there is an equivalent. I do think the Rangers could send one of their two middle infielders. And I think that would be awesome to see a Rangers representative on Team USA, along with seeing Martin Perez hopefully dominate for Venezuela. But that's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Rangers. Thank y'all so much for your questions. If I didn't get to them, keep sending them in. I will do another one next Monday. But thank you for making Locked On Rangers your first listen. For your next listen, check out Locked On Sports Today, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. Thank y'all so much for listening and subscribing. And until next time, don't forget to enjoy baseball.